G'day guys, welcome to today's video review of 2020 Best Picture Academy Award nominee, Joker. It starts with the old 1980s Warner Brothers logo, setting the stage for the era the movie's set in. We zoom in on Arthur Fleck, Joaquin Phoenix, as he's putting on his clown makeup in the mirror, whilst a voiceover on the radio explains how dangerous Gotham City is, and a city-wide state of emergency has been declared due to unending piles of garbage, breeding rats and health issues. Arthur is forcing himself to smile, as it is his job as a professional clown. Cut to the streets of Gotham, and Arthur is dancing around with an everything must go sign, when some kids tease him, hit him and steal the sign. He runs down the street after them and into an alley where they smash his sign over his head and beat him up. They leave him beaten and broken on the ground. We then cut to Arthur in therapy, laughing uncontrollably, so much so that he looks as though he's in pain. He expresses his frustrations to the therapist, but she treats him like any other client. She asks to see his journal, and he tells her how it's now also his joke diary as he's pursuing a career in stand-up comedy. He says he felt better when he was locked up in hospital, and she tells him that he's on 7 different medications and they must be doing something. The next scene, and Arthur is on the bus. He tries to make a kid in front of him laugh until the kid's mother tells him to leave them alone. He bursts out again into uncontrollable laughter. She asks if he thinks it's funny, and he gives her a card that explains that it's a medical condition. Arthur heads home to where he lives with his mother, Penny Fleck, played by Frances Conroy. She worked for the Wayne family and quizzes Arthur over whether or not Thomas Wayne has replied to her letters, while Arthur feeds her. They sit back together to watch their favourite TV show, Live with Murray Franklin, played by Robert De Niro. As they watch the show, Arthur fantasises that he's in the audience. He gets called out by Murray, who brings him out on stage, where he's now the star of the show and Murray's best friend. Arthur's now back at work in the dressing room, preparing for his next clown gig. A fellow performer says that he heard about the beating he took and offers him a gun to protect himself. Arthur gets called into the boss's office and told he has to pay for the broken sign. His boss also tells him that everybody else thinks he's weird. While he's trudging back to his apartment through his everyday life, an attractive neighbour, Sophie, played by Zazie Beetz, and her daughter get into the lift with him. She engages with him when the lift stops in a nonchalant interaction, which he takes as a come-on. Back in his apartment, and he's washing his sick mother in the bath, and she's carrying on about Thomas Wayne again. She says if he knew how they were living, he'd do something about it immediately. He tells her it's almost ready to debut his stand-up, and she questions, "Don't you need to be funny to be a stand-up comedian?" Later that night, while watching TV alone in the lounge, Arthur plays with and dances around the room with the gun. He accidentally lets it off and has to cover by saying he's watching a war movie. The next day, he stalks the neighbour from the lift, Sophie, but can't approach her. He then ends up in a comedy club, making notes while watching a stand-up comedian. He laughs at the wrong parts and can't understand why the audience finds the punchlines funny. He notes things down like rude topics are funny. While fantasising and writing in his journal at home, someone comes to the door. It's Sophie, asking if he was following her, and he tells her that he does stand-up comedy and that she should come and check out his gig. The next day, Arthur's performing as a clown in a kid's hospital. While dancing around for the kids, the gun he's carrying drops out of his pocket and onto the floor. He's then, of course, fired from his job as a clown. The guy who gave him the gun also tells the boss that Arthur tried to buy it from him. Arthur's now sitting, dejected, still dressed as a clown, on the subway, when 3 yuppies get into the carriage drunk. They harass a young woman on the same carriage, when Arthur starts breaking into uncontrollable laughter. The 3 yuppies tease Arthur and then proceed to beat him up, for fun. Arthur pulls the handgun and shoots 2 of them dead. He then runs onto the platform, hunts down the 3rd, and kills him too. He realises what he's done and runs. He locks himself into a nearby public toilet where he spontaneously, slowly starts dancing. metaphorically shedding his skin and beginning his transformation. We then see him walk straight to Sophie's door, kiss her, and take her inside. Arthur's medication is running out. He's in his apartment with his mother when Thomas Wayne comes on the TV being interviewed about the murder of 3 of his employees on the subway the night before. Thomas Wayne says that all Wayne employees, past and present, are family, which his mum picks up on immediately. However, he then goes on to berate the murderer and says, of course, he was wearing a clown mask, he's a coward, and anyone who sides with the killer is nothing but a clown. Arthur takes this personally and is visibly shaking. Next, Arthur is back in therapy. He's trying to explain that until now he didn't even know if he existed, but he does, and people are starting to notice. His therapist is not really listening, and she tells him their funding's been cut, and they're going to close down in a week. This poses the additional problem of where Arthur's going to get his meds from now. We cut to backstage at the comedy club where Arthur's preparing to go on for his first stand-up gig. He looks out over the crowd from backstage and sees Sophie in the audience. He gets introduced, and when he takes the stage, starts laughing uncontrollably until he's choking and crying, trying to make it stop. He pulls it together, and we cut to him and Sophie walking home. Arthur stops to look at a newspaper headline about the clown murderer, and Sophie shows her support for the killer, emboldening Arthur. He then sees a taxi drive past, and the passenger's wearing a clown mask with the face makeup design of his clown, which is now all over the city. Arthur smiles as he feels like he's the catalyst for this people's uprising that's beginning. Back home, and Arthur's mum's fallen asleep to Live with Murray Franklin. He wakes her up to go to bed and tells him that she's written another letter for Thomas Wayne and for him to post it. He opens it and reads it, and in it, it states that Arthur is Thomas Wayne's son. Arthur then confronts his mum about this new information. She tells him that she and Thomas were in love and that she'd signed papers to keep it quiet. Thomas Wayne, meanwhile, has announced that he's running for mayor of Gotham. Arthur takes the train out of Gotham and takes a stroll to Wayne Manor, where through the fence he sees young Bruce Wayne in the garden. He approaches him at the gate until Alfred intervenes. Arthur tells Alfred he's Penny Fleck's son and needs to see Thomas. Alfred tells him that his mother was a delusional, sick woman and to leave before he makes a fool of himself. Arthur runs off. When he gets back home, his mum is being taken to hospital by ambulance. He goes to the hospital, and while sitting outside having a cigarette, he's approached by 2 GCPD cops. They questioned his mum, and she had a stroke. They question Arthur about the subway killings. He blows them off and goes to his mum's room. While in his mother's hospital room, Sophie is seen sitting with him. Murray Franklin Live comes on the TV. Murray plays a tape of Arthur at the comedy club the other night, laughing uncontrollably on stage, and calls him a joker. They make fun of him on TV, which is not the way Arthur envisages appearing on Live with Murray Franklin. The city is now breaking down, with the average people adopting the mask of Arthur's clown and protesting against Thomas Wayne. To the people, he's the symbol of the rich. To Arthur, it's more personal. He goes to a theatre where Thomas Wayne will be, and there's a protest outside. He sneaks into the event dressed as an usher. He spies out Thomas Wayne and then confronts him in the bathroom. Arthur tells him that he's Penny Fleck's son, and Thomas Wayne tells him the same thing that Alfred did. He then tells Arthur that he's adopted, and that she adopted him when she was working for Wayne Enterprises, and that she went into Arkham Asylum. Arthur refuses to believe this and starts laughing uncontrollably, to which Thomas Wayne says it's not funny and punches him in the face. He also says, "Don't ever come near my son again." With his world and mind shattered, Arthur hides in his fridge at home while the cops leave messages on his answering machine. Then there's a message from the Murray Franklin show, who want Arthur to come on as a guest. Arthur goes to Arkham State Hospital to investigate the records of him and his mother's true origins. He steals the records that confirm what Thomas Wayne had told him, but worse. She was not only delusional, but allowed physical abuse on her son, Arthur, and he was adopted from unknown parents. He then goes to Sophie's apartment and walks into the lounge, sits on the couch with his head in his hands. Sophie appears and's like, "Who the hell are you? You're in the wrong apartment," and begs him to leave. His relationship with her was all in his mind. Arthur then goes to see his mum in hospital. He's looking at her with a blank face now that he knows the truth. Emotionless, he smothers her with a pillow. Back at his apartment, Arthur is rehearsing his introduction to the upcoming interview with Murray. His plan is that midway through the interview, he'll say a knock-knock joke and then blow his own head off live on TV. He's now preparing by dyeing his hair green and dancing around the bathroom in his underwear. He takes care in applying his face makeup for his TV debut, and there's a ring at the door buzzer. He grabs a pair of scissors and goes to the door. It's two of his old colleagues from his clown job, the guy who gave him the gun and a dwarf. While the guy that gave him the gun starts saying that the cops have been questioning him about the murders, Arthur uses the scissors to suddenly slash his throat and stab him in the eye. He beats his head to the wall until he's dead. Gary the dwarf is screaming and crying. Arthur suddenly says, "I'm going to be on the Murray Franklin show tonight." Gary's pleading with him not to kill him, and Arthur says he can go. When he gets to the door, though, he can't reach the chain to unlock the door and has to ask Arthur for help. Arthur unlocks the door and tells him, "You were the only one who was ever nice to me," kisses him on the head and lets him go. We now cut to the Joker in full costume, liberated and dancing down the stairs towards the Murray Franklin studio. The two cops who are trying to question him appear and chase him. He gets onto the subway and there's a protest happening that day. Half the train passengers are wearing clown masks and Arthur manages to give the cops a slip. Backstage, and Murray and his producer visit Arthur in his dressing room. This is where Arthur asks Murray to introduce him on the show as Joker. Now comes the main event, Tonight Live with Murray Franklin. Joker prepares backstage by dancing in slow motion. He comes out to applause, dances over to Murray, confidently shakes his hand, and then kisses the guest. He then explains that he's not dressed as a clown as a political statement, he just wants to make people laugh. He then pulls out his journal to read a joke and notices a sentence he'd written previously. "I hope my death makes more sense than my life." His mood changes. "Here's one. Knock knock." Murray makes fun of him, so he tells an off-colour joke. The guest and Murray chastise him. He now confesses on live TV that he killed the three yuppies on the subway. Joker explains how comedy is subjective and he thought killing those guys was funny. He starts a tirade about how awful society is and how no one would care if he got killed, but because these guys worked for Thomas Wayne, everyone's getting upset. He then asks Murray if he knows what it's like out there, to which Murray replies that not everyone is awful. Joker turns and looks at Murray and says, "But you're awful, Murray. Making fun of me on TV, playing my tape." Murray pushes him again, so Joker says, "How about another joke?" They try to cut him off, but he yells, "What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash? You get what you fucking deserve." With that, he pulls his gun and shoots Murray directly in the face on live TV. Screaming and panic ensues in the studio. Joker sits in his chair smirking and shaking at first, then stands up not knowing what to do, as he didn't rehearse this. He then shoots Murray again in the chest. He does a little dance, then grabs the camera and is about to say goodnight, and they cut the TV feed. The news of this event is now all over every TV station and Gotham erupts. The Joker is in the back of a cop car, driving through the carnage, smiling, laughing at what he's inspired. An ambulance, driven by a clown mask wearing protester, suddenly crashes into the cop car and Joker escapes. He's held up on the bonnet of the cop car and praised by the mob. Meanwhile, Thomas and Martha Wayne are exiting a theatre with their son Bruce. They duck down an alley to try and avoid the mob. A clown mask wearing protester kills Martha and Thomas Wayne. Joker, now standing on the bonnet of the police car, dances, smiles, and smears a giant smile across his face in blood, mimicking the Heath Ledger Joker scars, to which the mob cheers. We then cut straight to Arthur in Arkham Asylum, laughing uncontrollably to a new therapist. She asks him what's so funny, and he says he was just thinking of a joke, to which we see Bruce Wayne standing alone in the alley. She asks him if he'll tell her the joke, and he says she won't get it. The final scene is Arthur walking down the hallway, leaving the therapist's office and leaving a trail of bloody footprints. He then starts dancing before being chased by guards. Wow, what an incredible movie. If this film had been called Insane Clown Man and had nothing to do with Batman or the DC Universe, I'd still say this is a fantastic film. But being a huge Batman DC fan, the way this movie was done, and having it be another possible origin story for the Joker, and weaving the Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne origin in there too, was just masterful. The almost revelation of the Joker possibly being Bruce's half-brother was breathtaking as a fan, and a lot more compelling than both our mums are named Martha, let's be super friends. Todd Phillips has followed the path of Tim Burton and Christopher Nolan, in that these filmmakers in particular realise Batman is not a superhero. His villains are not mutants or superpowered. The DC in DC Comics stands for Detective Comics. Batman's rogues gallery are an assortment of psychopaths and sociopaths, and as such, the entire Batman universe is a noir-driven psychological detective story. This movie is a deep dive into one possible origin for the Joker. I say possible because it is possible that the entire story happened in the interview room in Arkham Asylum at the end of the movie with the new therapist, and this is just his current version of historical events. And the whole reason that you're unsure if some of the things taking place are real or in Arthur's mind is down to the incredible acting performance of one Joaquin Phoenix. He is in every single scene of this movie and carries the entire thing by himself. You can't look away at the commitment in his eyes, and you'll fully believe this guy has serious mental issues. What's great about his performance is at no stage is it overdone. He manages to fully convey how his character doesn't see the world like the rest of us, and as such doesn't find the same things funny. Joaquin deserves Best Actor for this without a doubt. It is tragic and you do sympathise with him, particularly at the start, but it's so well crafted that the violence is not cartoony and graphic like a Tarantino movie or even Birds of Prey, but so extreme because it's so realistic and brutal in a real life context. The scariest thing is that this guy is so unpredictable and will ultimately make the perfect nemesis to Batman. I could actually talk about this modern masterpiece for an hour. It's the best DC film since The Dark Knight, and I loved Aquaman and Wonder Woman as well, and proves that you don't need $200 million worth of explosions and action, just good characters and stories done with respect by great actors, directors and real artists, and that goes for all genres. So my rating for Joker is 9.5 stars out of 10. This was my personal favourite movie of 2019, so you know who I'm going for at the Academy Awards. It's also the last one before the awards in a few days, so good luck to all the nominees. Thanks for checking out today's video. If you enjoyed the content, please consider liking the video, sharing it with your friends. Check out one of the other videos on my channel, and while you're there, feel free to subscribe so you don't miss any of the new content, and feel free to leave a comment. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take it easy.